Hi guys, welcome. Today I wanted to talk to you about Mistborn. Specifically Era 2 because I just finished it. And let's talk about it. Okay, so Mistborn Era 1 and 2, pros and cons. I'll talk about Era 1 and then Era 2, and then we can kind of talk about like the pros and cons of each and how they're similar and how they're different. Okay, so what is Mistborn? Mistborn is basically a planetary study of a planet and its magic systems, its people, and its gods throughout different eras of its existence. Era 1 kind of follows the typical fantasy genre where it is carriages, kind of like a medieval setting. And Era 2 follows more of a Western 1800s vibe. I believe Era 3 is either like a cyberpunk or a space opera, or maybe I'm mixing them all up. But Era 3 has not been written in, and I don't even think we have a solid release date. So I'm not going to worry about Era 3 yet. Let's talk about 1 and 2. Okay, so in Mistborn Era 1, the magical system, there's actually a couple different magic systems within the Mistborn world. However, in Era 1, we mainly talk about allomancy, which is certain people are born with the ability to ingest certain metals, and those metals give you a superpower. Some people are born only able to ingest and develop magical powers with one specific metal, and other people are born being able to ingest any of the allomantic metals and do any of the superpowers. It's a one or nothing. It's one or everything or nothing. You're either born with the ability to do 0 magic, 1 magic, or all the magics. I'll be honest with you, I've read all 3 of the original Mistborn Era 1. I read all 4, I think, of Era 2. And I read Secret History, and I still don't even remember what all of the different metals do. One of them, pewter, I think, gives you super strength. Tin enhances like all of your senses, like your eyesight, your hearing, all that stuff. Certain metals you can push and pull on to make yourself kind of fly. All of Sanderson's flying abilities seem to be more falling with style than actually flying. But it's cool how he makes flying be kind of like a science fiction-y type of fantasy world. In Era 1, it's book number 1 is a heist story, more of a standalone, and then books 2 and 3 kind of go together, and all 3 of the books tell a whole and complete story. If you're new to Sanderson, I definitely recommend starting off with Mistborn book 1. In some stores, this book is called Mistborn: The Final Empire, and in some it's just Mistborn. So depending on where you're at in the world and which edition you have, depends on what this book is titled. So in Mistborn Era 1, it is the story of a young girl who finds out that she can do these superhuman abilities. It's a heist story about them trying to collect this metal that the Lord Ruler has been hiding. And then I don't want to get into spoilers, but by the end of the series, they obviously save the world from utter chaos. Era 2 can be read without having read Era 1. However, I do think that Era 1 is the better series. But in Era 2, it is no one is a Mistborn anymore, meaning that you can do all of the allomantic powers. You only have 1 power, although you could be twin-born, which means you are an allomancer and a ferrochemist, which means that you can have 1 allomantic power and 1 ferrochemical power. Mistborn Era 2 takes place hundreds of years after Era 1. However, some of the people in Era 1 are referenced in Era 2, such as like the Ascended Warrior, the Last Emperor. And if you read Era 1, you know how some of the history has been changed a little bit. which is very common even in the real world, so it's not really that big of a deal. But it just goes to show the fallacy of human interpretation and how stories change throughout the ages. Era 2 follows a man named Waxillium Landrin, who is a lawman out in the roughs, which is kind of like the Wild West. Through tragic circumstances, he is forced to go back to the city and take over his family's house and basically be a refined gentleman, which is very hard on him since he spent the last, 10, 20 years out in the Wild West being a cowboy, basically. And obviously, over the course of all of Era 2, they eventually, save the world from horrible things happening. And that kind of catapults us into Era 3, which we know nothing about, except that eventually there's going to be a space age. But let's talk about Era 1 and 2 and the pros and cons. This part is going to be very spoilery, so if you have not read Era 1 and Era 2 and Secret History, I suggest that you go read them because they are very good. I definitely suggest reading The Final Empire, but you could start with The Alloy of Law if you would rather. I will say in Era 2, though, the first book in Era 2 is the weakest book in the series. And I also highly suggest waiting to read Era 2 until you have read more of the Cosmere, because there are a lot of references in Era 2 about things going on in other planets. So you can definitely begin in Era 2. You just will not catch a lot of references to other things happening on other planets. If you read the series, you know what I'm talking about. So go read them and then come back and we'll talk. Okay, let's talk about the main characters. Vin versus Waxillium. I definitely relate a lot more to Vin than I do to Wax, but that could be just like the whole age thing. I'm definitely closer to Vin's age than to Wax's. I think that Vin is a more compelling character. I think she has more agency than Waxillium does, even though Waxillium might be more of an important character going forward. Like, Vin has done her duty. Like, in the end of the series, she dies. She has done her due diligence. She has gone into the beyond. Even though what she did save the world, that was just one catastrophic event in the history of catastrophic events that happens on Scadrial. Waxillium, though, is still alive, and because of the end of... Okay, so I read Lost Metal and Secret History, like, back to back, so I might be confused on which one ends with it, but one of them ends with, I think it was Lost Metal, ends with Cezid or Kelsier. One of them talking about how they need to catapult this world into the next age because they're basically going to die if they don't. And of course, Cezid is like, I am harmony, I am ruin and preservation together. I am weak, I cannot do this. And I'm just like, then you shouldn't have been the hero of ages. I did not like that twist in Era 1, and I still don't like it. I didn't even like him as a normal human in Era 1. And he's even worse as a god. But that's besides the point. I definitely liked the romance better as well in MISTBORN Era 1 than in Era 2. Although Steris did grow on me, and I do really like Steris, I don't like the whole... Okay, I think Warbreaker did it better, where it's an arranged marriage. I'm not really the biggest fan of, like, the arranged marriage trope. And also the whole thing with Marasai being in love with Waxillium. I wasn't the biggest fan of all that. I do like the fact, though, at the end of Era 2, well, I guess, like, 3/4 of the way through it, Waxillium gets the family. He kind of settles down. He got the ending that Vin and Elend deserved. I don't think I'm wrong in the fact that Vin and Elend are the best Cosmere couple ever. I just love them so much, and it was heartbreaking, although satisfying. the way that they went out. But yeah, the romance in Era 1, I think, is done much better than it is done in Era 2. Also, I think the magic system, although it is unique in both, I both like and dislike how unique the magic system is between the two eras. Like, Sanderson is doing this really cool thing where he's trying to show how a magic system evolves throughout the ages, which is interesting. But I have two questions about the magic system evolving. Number one, like, okay, in Era 1, the Kolos are like this combination of like humans and spikes and stuff. They're not actually their own breed of people. They're humans that have been mutilated into these beings. And then in Era 2, you can be Kolos blooded. I like missed a couple chapters, or I'm just so confused as to how that's possible. You know, and maybe that's addressed in Arcanum Unbounded, but I have not read that yet. But I'm just so confused. And the second thing is, how come the Mistborn all wiped out? Like, Sazed, I think it is said that, like, Sazed thought that, like, that much power in the palm of someone's hand would be too much, and so he stopped allomancy. Like, he stopped the Mistborn gene, or whatever it is. But I missed my Mistborn buddies. And I only have 3 books with them. Also, where the heck is Spook? Because he's not dead. I mean, sure, he's probably off with Kelsier, but, like, I wanted him to make an appearance in Era 2. I kind of had a feeling that Kelsier was still alive in Era 2, just because everyone talks about how much they love Kelsier, and I was like, well, he's dead. So I kind of had a feeling he was going to come back. But Secret History was pretty good. I did enjoy Secret History. Although I do want more of Spook. I was really hoping we'd get more of Spook in Era 2. But we didn't. It's okay. It's fine. One thing that Era 2 does do better than Era 1 is side characters. I like Wayne more than I think I like anyone besides Vin and Elend and Tensoon in this book. I think Wayne is like the best side character. He's so weird and I love him so much. And his death, actually, it didn't hit me as hard as Vin and Elend's. But it was such a fitting end. And I had a feeling, too, that he was going to die. Just because he kept talking about it. And also, he doesn't really have a place anymore. Yeah. But I loved how he went out. I love how he saved Wax. I loved how, even though there's some more Mistborns in Era 2, which is kind of weird because I think they're going to come back for Era 3. I liked how Sanderson gave Marcy, Wax, and Wayne each a time to experience what being a Mistborn would have felt like. And I just think that's really sweet. I like that a lot. Thank you, Sanderson, for doing that. At least one character in the Cosmere gets to live happily ever after, for now. I am curious to see if Era 3 is going to take place, like, in Wax's lifetime, or it's going to be about, like, some of his descendants. Because he is a descendant of Breeze and Alrian, I believe, from Era 1. So I'm curious to see, like, how Era 2 handles that, does it. I don't know if Era 3 is the cyberpunk or the space age or the after space age, or I don't really know. Also, are the Parshendi the men in black and gold? Like, is that like... Okay, I've only read the first 2.5 Cosmere Stormlight books, so I could have this wrong. I have not read them in, like, 4 years. But are the Parshendi the men in black and gold? Or red and gold? Black and red and gold? I don't know. I liked all the different references that Lost Metal had to, like, every single Cosmere book ever. I did like that. I liked how it really referenced a lot of his other books. Like he said, the gloves are off. I think that's hilarious that he said that. in an interview, I believe it was at one time, because the gloves are off. It means something very different to Sanderson's fans. I liked how Era 2 also showed a lot more of the god of the world. It showed a lot more of Sazed. We learned a lot more about like the shards and all that stuff, which really goes into how Era 2 really branches out in the form of it's not as self-contained as Era 1 is. It has references and cross-references and straight up taking characters from other books and plopping them into this series. I think it's awesome. I think it's amazing. I like it. I understand why you can start off with Era 2. I definitely do not suggest reading. I wouldn't suggest to anyone reading Era 2 first and then branching out into the other books. I definitely still think that Era 1 is the better starting point. Just for the fact that it's more self-contained. You can read book 1 without having to finish the whole trilogy, even though you should. But I understand it, and I love how Era 2 really like just connects the Cosmere together. But yeah, those are my thoughts. What do you guys think about Era 1 and Era 2? What did you like better about some and did not like about the others? And just let me know your conspiracy theories about the Cosmere. Talk to you later. Bye.